So, last minute decision to try doing a live stream here, which is why I'm getting started a little bit late. Figured we'd do breakfast together. Had to get everything kind of set up and going, and well, that's why we're getting a late start. So, yeah, let's just get to it. I'm gonna make some biscuits and gravy. Of course, I didn't grab any of the stuff I need here, so I'll go grab a bowl real quick. So biscuits and gravy is something we do usually on Sunday mornings, and it's pretty simple. I'm going to start with grabbing 4 cups of flour, 4 cups of flour. Then we're just going to grab a couple measuring spoons here. So I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of sugar. I'm going to do a tablespoon of baking powder, and then 2 teaspoons of salt. And that's, as far as dry ingredients, that's it. It's just flour, a little dash of sugar, a little bit of baking powder, a little bit of salt, and like I said, that's it for the dry ingredients. The only other thing that goes in here, butter and milk. Biscuits are super easy. So let's get a couple of tablespoons of sugar in here. And let's get our baking powder and our salt. And if you want to do some other kind of salt, that's fine. I'm just using regular old iodized salt. Nothing special. I don't know where my teaspoon is at, so I have a habit of measuring out stuff like this. There's 1, and there's 2. In other words, if you're a little off, it doesn't quite measure out, it'll probably be okay, unless you're going like super crazy. Then it can be something drastic. I'm just going to give these a quick stir. While I'm at it, let me get my cutter. Where's my dough scraper? It's a cheap little thing. This one's a brand called Dash of That. It's just a simple metal scraper here for like dough and whatnot. Actually has little measurements on it, which is nice, I suppose. I actually never used them for measuring anything, but as far as when it comes to scraping, and especially when I'm making biscuits, because it's something I do with the dough, which we'll get to a little bit later, this comes in super handy with that. And then there's a simple little cutter. It's what I use to make my biscuits with. So I'm just gonna stir the dry ingredients up here real quick. Just to make sure they're all good and incorporated. All right. So there's two things that I do with my biscuits. The first one is the butter, and I use frozen butter. We're going to use a whole cup of butter. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of chop it up, and then I'm going to break it up in the dough here, or in the flour mixture, till they're all kind of like about pea size. Now it'll start kind of melting on you. Some people will tell you to go ahead and throw it back in the freezer or fridge for a little bit to kind of get that butter to come back together, and you can do that if you want. It works great if you do. I generally don't, just because I don't have that kind of patience. So, but I still start with frozen butter, and what that kind of does is once you're baking it and that butter begins to melt, it's going to create these little pockets, and so it makes the biscuits kind of airy. The other thing I do, and that's where this comes into play, is I go ahead and, so the dough itself is going to be kind of almost shaggy, I guess you could say, and you don't really need it. Like, you don't want to really knead the dough. You don't want it that compact. But what I do is I kind of mash it out to about a 1 inch, basically 1 inch thick layer of dough, and then I'll cut that in half, stack it, and I do that again, and I cut it in half, I stack it, and I do it again. And it creates these nice little flaky layers. So let me go grab that butter, and then I'll get this started with cutting it up. Now, as far as salted versus unsalted, again, it's going to be kind of a personal preference. Today I grabbed salted. A lot of times I use unsalted, and to be honest, it doesn't seem to really make that big of a difference. So let's go ahead and start getting this all cut up here. I'm actually going to tilt you guys down so you can actually see what I'm doing here. Alright. Now this part you want to be careful when you're doing this. I have seen some people, and I've actually tried it myself, and it works out really well. But one thing you can do is actually just take like a cheese grater. You can take this and grate it. If you're concerned with handling the knives and sharp whatnot, one of the problems is it may try to slip on you a little bit. So just make sure you're careful. We're not needing to get these in like giant cuts, but it is frozen butter, so it's not going to want to slice super easily. Just make sure you're keeping your fingers away from the business end here. We're going to be breaking this up more anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm not too terribly worried about the size that I'm getting. I just want them big enough, or small enough I should say, to where when I go to start breaking them up, well, I'll be able to break them up. I'm just going to throw those in there. And for the other half, now each one of these is half a cup. Like I said, we want a full cup. See, like I said, it'll try to get away from you. So just make sure you got your fingers clear. Keep the knife on the board. and go from there. Make a little bit of mess, that's fine. We can always clean that up later. Some of these bigger chunks. Alright, let's get this in here. Alright, we're done with that. Alright, so now what we need to do is we're going to take all this butter and we're going to go ahead and mix this in with the flour. Now the cool thing is once you get the butter kind of coated, the flour will stick to your fingers. That's a big old chunk there. I should cut that up a little bit more. As you can see, until it gets warm, the butter will just break on you. You can tell once it's starting to kind of melt a little bit though, because instead of just breaking off, it'll start kind of bending and basically you can tell it's starting to melt. So you want to try to get this done relatively quickly. And we're just trying to break them up. What I'm looking for is like little pea sizes. And doing this early in the morning, especially before anybody else happens to be up, or if everybody's already off to either work or whatever the case may be. It's kind of a nice little, I guess you could call it a meditation moment. Like, I kind of like some of these mindless types of tasks every once in a while. Some of these big ones you may have to come up just a little bit more, and that's fine. That's why I got the cutting board still over there. And you just keep going through. This part probably takes the longest. It's one of the most tedious parts of it. So you're just wanting to go through and making sure you got, all these big pieces of butter busted up. Get your hands in there and get them dirty. By the way, yes, I did wash my hands before doing this. Just in case any of you are curious. And most of it done here. I'm still coming across some big ones. And again, for those who are coming a little late, as far as ingredients, after the live stream, I'll actually go ahead and list the ingredients down below as far as the measurements that I used here this morning. Obviously, you can adjust those as needed, depending on how many people you're trying to feed, or if you're making like biscuits and gravy, or maybe you're just making biscuits because that's what you want for your bread for a day or two, because biscuits will last you a little bit. You can make a decent amount of biscuits, and as long as you store them right, just kind of keep them, maybe throw them in an old bread bag or something. They'll keep for a couple of days easily. Now, you don't want to just leave them out on like the counter or whatnot, because they will get hard and you're not going to want to eat them then. They usually don't last that long around here, even when I make a bunch. This right here will probably make about, it usually makes about between 8 to 10 biscuits, which is more than enough. Especially if you're doing biscuits and gravy, because that gravy is going to fill you up. Now, we do like a sausage gravy and whatnot, but we'll get to that. I think we're about done here. Most of the bigger ones here. Some of them, they don't all have to be the same size. You might have some that are a little bigger than others, and that's okay. You just don't want any chunks of butter that are just massive. So just make sure to kind of go through it. Make sure you got them all. Once you're happy with it, the only other thing that we've got to add is the milk. Again, flour, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of baking powder, a little bit of salt, some butter, some milk, and that's it. Easy peasy. Alright, I think I'm pretty happy with that. Use our high-tech napkin here to wipe this off, and take a sip of my coffee, grab a measuring cup. Find it. Never in the same place twice. Oh, there it is. Alright. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use about a cup and a half of milk. Might even go a little beyond that. So there's a cup. There's a cup and a half. Let's actually make it 1 2/3. Whatever I don't use here, I'll just drink it real quick. It ain't gonna go to waste, so you don't have to worry about that. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna pour in at least a good cup of it. And start mixing that together. And then we'll just add a little bit more as we go. And you can see the dough's all starting to slowly kind of come together here. Let's go ahead and use a little bit more. And judging by the dough, I'm pretty sure I'm going to use all of it. So let's go ahead and just dunk the rest of that in there. I'm going to kind of mix this around the best we can with this little spatula, and then I'll get my hands in there. But before I do that, before I get my hands wet with this dough, I'm going to grab just a little bit of flour, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of spread that over the surface here. That way I have something to put the dough on. The dough won't stick, of course, to the flour, and then we'll just clean all this up later. And you ain't gonna need much, so just sprinkle just a little bit. That should be plenty. Alright, let's go ahead and get our hands in here and start mixing this dough together. And if you find you put too much milk in there, that's fine. You can add more flour to it if need be. Vice versa, if you don't think you got enough milk, you can go ahead and again add more. Right. This is kind of stickier than I was expecting, but that's fine. I actually added just a little too much milk, but it'll be fine. So we're going to go ahead and just pour this out here, work the rest of it on the counter. Because again, we're not trying to actually knead the dough really, like you would bread. We'll have to clean our hands off a little bit later, that's fine. So instead of thinking of it as kneading right now, all we're trying to do is more like incorporate. Alright, and as we go through a little process here of cutting, stacking, and flattening, that's going to kind of work the dough a little bit as well. Now, what I should have done, and what I'll do right now, is start preheating the oven too, because we're nearing the end of our little dough session here. And so that way we can get it into the oven quicker. So we're going to set the oven to 425. If I can get some of this dough off my hands. That's the part you usually don't see in a lot of these videos, is all the dough everywhere. It can get pretty messy. I've had some doughs that by the time I was done with it, there wasn't a speck of dough left on my hands. I've had others where I gotta go to the sink and wash my hands. Again, 425. Alright, so that's preheating there. Let's go ahead and kind of start flattening this out. Like I said, we're trying to get it down to about 1 inch. And you can kind of use your scraper now to kind of keep everything kind of contained. Flatten the sides, give you a good shape to work with if you want. And you just kind of flatten this out evenly until you're roughly 1 inch thick. And you can, what I usually do is I know that my thumb, this section right here, is roughly 1 inch. So I go right here, I'm about 1 inch. I'm going to cut this in half. Take this, just like that. Alright, and we're going to work this dough back down until it's about 1 inch again. And we're just going to keep doing this until we're happy with it. You just want to make sure it's all even for the most part. Let's kind of move these this way a little bit. Like I said, we kind of work it to where, you know, once we do cut it, you know, if you got it in a pretty decent rectangle, you can work it out and it stacks a little bit easier. That's the main reason I do that. And just keep flattening this sucker out. Get some of this extra and kind of try to incorporate that in there. And just just like that. And we're just going to keep doing that at least 3 to 4 times. I wouldn't really go too far with it. Like I said, 3 to 4 is usually good enough. So I think I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to cut it, I'm going to flip it, and then we're going to get our cookie sheet ready. I think we'll get rid of some of this excess here. There goes the cat. All right, cut this in half one more time. And same thing, I'm going to take it down to about 1 inch. Now the reason you don't want it too much above that is the biscuits, because of the layers, as they rise, if the dough's too thick, they'll rise up and they'll kind of topple over. They'll almost look like a slinky. So to prevent that, keep it at about 1 inch. You could even technically go down to about 1/2 inch if you wanted to. But I'd say right here is about good for us. So let's get our cookie sheet. I'm going to wash my hands real quick. There's our cookie sheet. We're just going to lay down a little bit of parchment paper. I think I actually got enough parchment paper, but that's all right. It will work. And we're just going to start cutting out our biscuits. Now with these, that's a pretty decent sized biscuit, but that's the size I like, especially for breakfast biscuits, doing, you know, like biscuits and gravy. So I'm going to just start from this corner here, cut it out, lay it on my sheet. And I'm trying to make these cuts as close to the edges as possible, because we want to use up a good amount of this dough in like one shot. Now we'll obviously take the excess, put it back together, and make more biscuits out of it. But this just kind of reduces how much I'm going to have to use, because you'll get some funky biscuits with the excess. I'll tell you right now though, they taste no different. They just look a little different, and that's okay. Looking a little different, ain't nothing wrong with that. I'll kind of put that together there. You really don't want to work the dough too much more than what it already is, because again, we're not making bread dough. This is for biscuits. So all I'm kind of doing here is tapping it back together so I can get a good cut. I think we got one more biscuit here. And all I'm going to do is kind of come in here. I'm just going to put it in here. Just give it that good round feel in there. And that's it. Biscuits are ready to go. So all we got to do now is just wait for our oven to finish preheating. So in the meantime, what I'm going to do real quick, because we're done with that, we're done with most of what we've been dealing with here. So we just do a quick cleanup, because we're at 330 right now. So that oven's still got a couple of minutes. That's another thing I like about this scraper, is when you've been working with doughs and stuff, you can kind of use it to clean up the counter real quick. Just like that. Put all this stuff off to the side. Good little wipe down. You always want to make sure your prep space, cooking space, and just general your space is clean. There you have it. We got clean space again. So now we're waiting for the oven to finish preheating, right? So finish cleaning this up here, put stuff away. All right. I'm gonna have a cup of coffee or a drink of our coffee. Get our sausage out. And then figure out what we're going to cook our gravy in. Don't need nothing huge. I think this will be just fine. What is this? This is a 10-inch. This is a 10-inch. Just got a 10-inch pan here. Now I don't have a lot of cast iron just yet. I do have a couple of things, and we do use them. We're slowly building our cast iron collection. So I've got like a pie pan. We've got actually a nice little flat griddle that we use for like tortillas and stuff. And then I do have a 10-inch skillet. But that one, so we picked up that one used, and I just haven't had a chance to go through and give it a thorough cleaning and then re-season it. Because you can tell whoever had it before hadn't used it in a long time. And so basically I have to kind of start from scratch with that one. But that's fine. Otherwise, I've been on the lookout for used cast iron and such, because eventually that's what I want. All right, so oven's preheated. So what we're going to do, we're going to throw those biscuits into the oven, again at 425, and it's only going to take about 20 minutes. So as soon as we're done with that, we're going to get to cooking on our sausage. So right now, I'm going to move you guys over here. Make sure I'm not smacking anything. And we're just going to kind of figure out where to put you. I think this is going to work a little bit better. There we go. So here's our biscuits into the oven. Let's set a timer for 20 minutes. And let's get started on our sausage. Now, the reason I've got this in a bag, we usually try to buy stuff like sausage, hamburger meat, stuff like that in larger quantities. And then we just kind of cut it up, mash it up, kind of flatten it out into Ziploc bags. Now, the reason we flatten it out is, one, it stacks a lot easier in your freezers. So you're taking up less freezer space. And two, because it's flattened out like that, it actually thaws out more evenly. So you know, like if you take a chub, you freeze it, you go to thaw it, the outer portion will be thawed out, but that center portion's still frozen solid. And by the time that ends up thawing out, the rest of it's now kind of mushy because it's beginning to degrade. Well, with it being flat, it all kind of thaws out evenly. So it thaws out better, it stacks evenly, taking up less freezer space. So yes, it's an added cost because we have to get freezer bags, but it's just ease of use. All right, so we're going to go ahead, grab our little wooden spatula here, get this turned on. I'm going to start cooking this up. Now, the only thing that we need for our sausage gravy here, really, is our sausage. Depending on how much grease we have in here after the sausage is cooking, I might throw in just a little extra butter, which will help when we're basically adding our flour, because it's going to kind of act like a roux essentially between the flour and the grease mixture. And we're going to mix that all up, and the only other thing really is milk, and that's going to make our gravy. Now you can throw in a little extra pepper. I actually like tossing in just a little bit of paprika, If you think it needs more salt, add more salt. As far as that kind of stuff goes, the seasoning, that's going to be to your own personal taste. The gravy itself is sausage, flour, milk, and that's it. So while this is cooking up here, I'm going to grab me another cup of coffee. I'll be right back. All right. So that's bright, isn't it? And realize just how much light we had going on there. I suppose I can do that and kind of block it a little bit. Joys of doing content creation, right? Especially when you're doing a impromptu live stream, is what it is. So while this is cooking, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing here, all right? Aside from just breakfast. This channel as a whole, of course, we're working towards becoming homesteaders. That's what we want to do. And everybody's got their own different reasons for doing it. It could be coming from a prepper mindset. It could be just, you know what, I'm tired of living in the city. I just want to, you know, simpler, quieter life. Maybe you're tired of the supply chains and chemicals and everything else that goes into the food, you know, eating processed foods, things of that nature. Maybe it just looks like it's fun. You see everybody else doing it and you want to try it too. None of those are wrong ideas. None of those are bad reasons to do it. But some of you, like us, so we live in the city here, and you know, we're limited on our space. Luckily, we are renting this house that's allowing us to grow a larger garden. But before that, we were in an apartment, you know, and it's kind of hard to have a garden in the apartment. You can grow some stuff on balconies and stuff. I've seen people do it, but it does make it more difficult. So what you can do instead, though, is if you can't learn how to grow stuff, at least learn how to cook it. Maybe even learn how to preserve it. You know, hit up the farmer markets for fresh produce if you want. There's other things that you can do outside of a garden. Gardening is only the production side. You still got to know what to do with that food once you've got it, once you've cooked it, once you've grown it and you've raised it, and now it's time to use it. You need to know how. That's kind of the point, right? Is, you know, you're trying to provide for yourself. You got some sustainability going on. All right. All I'm doing right now is just breaking up the sausage, if you happen to be curious. So anyway, you know, if you're one of those that's like, well, I can't grow a garden because I don't have the space. There's nowhere for me to grow a garden. So that's fine. Like I said, start learning how to cook. Start learning how to can. Start, you know, checking out local farmer markets. Also, depending on where you're at, look at community gardens, like gardening allotments and stuff. There are some areas that sometimes have community gardens where you can go in and you can assist with growing stuff with local people in your area. You might even be able to reserve a particular spot for you. Those are your plans. Look it up. See if that's something that's available to you. If not, maybe you've got neighbors that are into gardening and have vegetables and stuff growing. Approach them. See if maybe they mind if you come over and give them a hand. Maybe they can give you some pointers. There are options. So don't think that all because of my situation, I'm stuck. I've got nothing to use to learn how to develop skills that I might need on a homestead, on a farm. That's simply not true. There are all kinds of stuff that you can learn. And there's all kinds of resources that you can go to. It's outside of just YouTube and, you know, other social media and search engines. You can go to local people in your area. You probably know, heck, you might even work with people who are into gardening and stuff. Talk to them, see, hey, you mind if I come over, you know, even just on a weekend, see what you guys are doing. You know, maybe I can help you with your garden. Who knows? Maybe they'll even let you plant a few things. You never know. Don't know if you don't try. Don't know if you don't ask. Point of all this is there is no wrong time or wrong place to get started. You know, if you're thinking, you know what, I'll get going when the timer's right, you need to change that and take that when out and just say the time is right. In other words, do it now. Now, there's other caveats as far as, you know, well, I got to get property and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I can't help you there. We don't even have property either. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to do this and what that's going to look like for us as far as the property type, size, things of that nature. We know where we're going. That part we've got down. We just don't know exactly how to get there yet. But that is fine. In the meantime, there's plenty that we can do and plenty that we can learn. That being said, this sausage is just about done here. So I'm going to kind of move you guys back down here in just a moment. So all we're trying to do basically is just kind of cook the sausage up and brown it. But you don't want it burnt. You don't want it too hot. We're actually going to reduce the heat too, because matter of fact, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to reduce the heat a bit to about a medium setting. Still obviously hot enough to cook the meat, but it's going to hopefully keep it from trying to burn the flour, which is a thing that can happen. All I want to do is I'm going to move you guys back down here so you can see what's going on the stove. I'm going to go grab me some flour. Now, as far as how much flour, it really depends again on how much you're cooking up here. I've got about, I'd say 2/3 of a cup, but I'm not going to use all of that. So I'll kind of go through my process and what I'm looking for and what I'm thinking about when I'm adding my flour here. And it's kind of the same with the milk, to be honest. I actually don't measure out the milk. So that part, again, is going to be kind of depending upon how much you're making, how big your skillet is. You know, there's a few things that are going to go into that. If I had to guess, I would say it's about, I'd say it's about half a cup of milk I probably put in here, no more than a cup. And again, this is a 10-inch skillet. Alright, so it looks like everything's pretty well cooked. I'm not seeing any pink. Nothing's really started to crisp up yet. But it looks like we're all good to go. And we still got about 8.5 minutes left on our biscuits. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to go ahead start adding some flour. I'm just going to kind of sprinkle it in there just like this, just to kind of cover everything, and then I'm going to get it all good and incorporated. And what I'm doing here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but what's happening is, of course, the flour's sticking to everything. Now, as I keep doing this, you'll see that the sausage will kind of start looking almost like little, like dough balls, almost like cookie dough, I guess you could say. So you'll see it start kind of coating, okay? But that's not quite enough. We want some more, so I'm going to add some more flour in here. Because I like a good thick sausage gravy. And this will probably be enough, because now we've got to a point to where it's all getting incorporated, right? You know, we have to kind of work to get it sticking, which tells me if I put more flour in here, it probably won't stick, and that's not what I want. I want it all incorporated with the sausage, and I'll give you another close-up here in just a moment so you can see kind of what this looks like. We're just going to make sure we're all good. And you can still see some of the flour on the sides. That's fine. Again, it tells me no more is going to stick to it. But you know, I don't know if you can tell that there, but it's kind of got, you know, a doughy look to that sausage now. That tells me we're good to go. So now what I'm going to do is start pouring in some milk. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get it to where basically it's going to submerge pretty much most of what I've got in here, okay? Right about there. That should be more than enough. Now here's the trick. I'm going to kind of start stirring this. You want to do it slow because you don't want to, of course, splash milk everywhere, right? But it has to be constant. All right. Now, if you stop for just a moment, that's fine. It ain't going to hurt you. But for the most part, you really want to keep this going. Now, right now, you might be thinking, oh, that's too watery. As this continues to cook here, we can even kind of bring our temperature up just a tad, just above medium right now. And I'm going to just keep on stirring this. Now what's going to happen is as this continues to cook, this is going to begin to thicken up. And the good thing about this, because if you use any kind of gravy mixes, a lot of times, not on all of them, but a lot of them, you'll notice there's like cornstarch and stuff in it. Well, what it's doing is it's using that cornstarch to thicken it up, okay? Because cornstarch thickens really easily. Well, this is just flour. Flour, sausage, milk. It will still thicken up. It just takes time. So we're at just under 5 minutes right now, and I can almost guarantee it's going to take the full 5 minutes, maybe even longer. But as you go, like already, I can tell that this is starting to thicken up a bit. Okay. And we're just going to keep going through this. And once you get to a point where you like the consistency, you think it's good, you can go ahead and turn that heat off, but you want to kind of keep stirring it for a little bit. But if you'll notice, there's no clumping. That's why I like using the sausage. If I don't use sausage in my gravy, then you do have to go through and make a good roux. And what that roux would do is kind of give you the same thing. You get this good creamy sausage, or gravy, not sausage. You'll get a good creamy, lump-free sauce or gravy. Keep wanting to say sausage, but if you can tell, this is starting to really thicken up here. Now, if you do think it's a little too thick, you can actually add a little more milk to it, and that'll dilute it a little bit more. Me, I like the gravy a little on the thicker side. This is probably about good right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that heat off, but we're going to keep stirring here. We can even kind of move it over so it's off that heat. Now this is where, if you think you want to throw in some extra pepper, maybe some salt, you can do that. Like I said, I like throwing a little paprika on mine. but I'm going to do that actually afterwards. So I'm going to put this actually on my biscuit, and then I'm going to put a little paprika on it, and I'm going to eat it. So we just keep on stirring it. And if you can see here, that's a good, it's not too thick, it's not too diluted, and that's it. I mean, that's gravy. That's good old sausage gravy. And I took it off the heat, or off the burner. Even though I turned the burner off, this sucker's still hot. So I really don't want this to continue to cook anymore, because again, the thickness is good. And I think we're good to go from there. So I'm going to move this over to our prep area. Don't know why, but we have these little like bamboo pot holders, I guess you could say, and I absolutely love these things. They're great. All right, I'm going to bring you guys right back over here. Because we are almost done. So we've got what? We've got about a minute left in the oven. Let me go put the excess flour back. Again, that was about a half a cup of flour that we used for the gravy. Let's see if we can actually see it better now that we don't have all those shining lights. Let's angle this down. This is what our gravy looks like here. And if you ask me, that's perfect. That is right where it needs to be. So we're about 10 seconds left here, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to check the biscuits. Like most things in the oven, you're looking for a good golden like color to them. So let's see what they look like. I'm going to bring you guys with us. Oh, those look good. So let's go ahead. I need both hands for this. Some of that butter melted out. Oh yeah, a lot of that butter melted out. That usually doesn't happen. That's all right. And here are the biscuits. Of course, that is super hot right now, so you want to be careful with this. So I'm going to go ahead and get down a couple of plates, one for me, one for Monty. Get my little thing of paprika here. There it is. Actually need more paprika. I didn't realize how low we were. All right, let's give this just a second here to cool off, because I don't want to go in and grabbing it right now, but I got to tell you, these biscuits look good. All right, so adjust you a little bit. Now, here's what I was talking about as far as how flaky these are. I don't know if you can see how it's layered, and it's just flaky. These things are hot. This one's going to do the same thing. They just break apart super, super easy. And that's because we did that layering as we were going through making our dough. So let's go ahead, let's get some gravy on these. And just a little bit of paprika. Don't want to overdo it here. That's good. Just like that. And voila, breakfast is served. Oh yeah, this whole process has taken almost an hour. We're at 56 minutes and 50 seconds right now. So, sure, it's a little bit of process. It's not as easy as getting up and grabbing a bowl of cereal or whatever. But it tastes amazing. If you ask me, it's better. It tastes way better. I'll take that over a bowl of cereal almost any day. So, with that being said, I think that's going to do it for me right now. I'm going to have breakfast here. I've got quite a bit of stuff I actually need to get done in the house. We need to do some cleaning in here. I do have some stuff I need to do out in the garden. I actually do want to do a quick little update on our watermelon. Well, I should say watermelons. That'll probably be in a little short. So thanks for hanging out with us this morning, and thanks for following us on this journey that we're headed down and headed towards homesteading. I do plan on having a lot more videos coming up here soon. I've been kind of slacking on that a bit. Part of it's kind of restructuring some of the ideas that I have as far as how I want to present some of this stuff and how to basically present it in a better way. Because at the end of the day, no matter what it is that you're doing, whether you're trying to learn how to garden or cook, or maybe you're learning a new skill in some other area, aside from all the gardening stuff, of course, I'm learning how to do video editing and color grading and things of that nature. No matter what it is, the goal is to just get better at it. You do something, next time you do it, see if you can do it just a little bit better. So again, thank you, and don't forget to leave a comment down below if you've got any suggestions. Maybe you do something different here with gravy. What's your favorite breakfast meal? Drop a comment down below. Let me know. Who knows? Maybe we can find something else that we both like, and I'll cook some of that up next week. So otherwise, that's really going to do it for me. We'll see you on the next one.